As Pierpoint traders return post-COVID, Harper continues working remotely from a hotel where she meets hedge fund manager Jesse Bloom. Eric insists Harper return to the office, annoyed by her diminishing sharpness. On her first day back, Rishi publicly calls her out, adding to the tension. Harper and Yasmin, who have hated each other for nearly 3 years, find their animosity has only intensified, with Yasmin being particularly harsh. Daniel Van Deventer arrives from New York as rumors circulate about closing either the London or New York office. Eric grows increasingly frustrated as Robert, now sober and struggling with confidence, barely makes any calls. Yasmin, essentially running her desk, brings in business using personal contacts while Kenny is in rehab. However, she has become what she once despised, bullying the female grade on her desk just as she was bullied. At a party, Yasmin learns that Maxim's fund is closing, costing her a key client. She meets Celeste Paquet, a manager in the private wealth management division. Kenny returns from rehab more reflective, rendering Yasmin's aggression ineffective. Meanwhile, Eric is stood up by Harper at a client meeting as she opts to attend a speech by Bloom instead. Rishi's got some pre-buy stock options, and Eric promises he can flip them to Phelim. Feeling the pressure, Eric pushes Robert to revive old clients. Robert takes a shot with Nicole Craig, and they hit it off, both coming from modest backgrounds and trying to fit in with the elite. Things get steamy on the way home. Yasmin starts a thing with Maxim, but it gets tricky when her dad, Charles, shows up. Celeste invites Yasmin to a client dinner, but Yasmin thinks it's something more. Feeling out of place, she tries to move her dad's assets to Pierpoint. Meanwhile, Harper is working on landing Bloom as a client. Van Deventer, who Eric mentored, now threatens Eric's position. When Van Deventer forces Harper to take a call from Phelim against Eric's orders, the deal goes south. But Harper saves the day by getting Bloom to buy the stock at the last minute, leaving Eric feeling even more out of control. Pierpoint hosts a shooting holiday to celebrate the stock purchases, but they expected Phelim to be the major buyer, not Bloom. Phelim and Bloom clash, as Phelim rejects his humble roots while Bloom embraces them. Gus gets a gig tutoring Bloom's son, Leo, on a university essay. After trying to help, Gus tells Leo that true rebellion is finding success. Yasmin's dad embarrasses her during a meeting with Celeste by treating her like a child. When Yasmin reluctantly brings Kenny to a client meeting, he ends up connecting better than she does. Eric pressures Harper to get Bloom to sell his shares to Phelim. When she confronts Eric, he reminds her who's in charge. Yasmin swings by Harper's place for advice, but Harper's out. Instead, she chats with Robert, who admits Yasmin used to control him and suggests she use that power on her dad. Ignoring Eric's orders, Harper advises Bloom to hold onto his shares and buy into a socially conscious investment fund for a controlling interest. Eric takes 2 weeks off, and Dan steps in to handle his duties, including handing out bonus checks. This leaves Eric feeling sidelined, so he visits the New York office. Harper gets the maximum bonus after a strong year. Yasmin, trying to bring her family's money to Pierpoint, discovers their finances are a mess. At a party, Celeste flirts with Yasmin but later reveals she has a wife. Robert, now having an affair with Nicole, finds out she made a move on Harper during their first year at Pierpoint, leaving him conflicted. Yasmin visits Harper late at night, worried about losing her family's money, but Harper shows no sympathy. The next day, Harper and Dan bond over their family backgrounds and end up sleeping together. That same night, Harper advises Bloom to go against Dan's advice. Yasmin learns her father's money is going to pay for NDAs to women he had affairs with, though he insists the family is still rich. In New York, Eric tries to get Dan fired, but Dan has already positioned himself to take Eric's place. Defeated, Eric is given a meaningless position and a corner office. Yasmin heads to Berlin to transition a client to Jackie. Harper tags along, aiming to reconnect with her estranged brother. When Harper tries to help, he rejects her, calling her selfish. Meanwhile, Robert learns of Clement's death and is sent to Oxford with Venetia, a grad on the FX desk, to recruit a top candidate. Struggling with his own issues, Robert breaks his sobriety, but despite being drunk, he impresses the recruit by selling Pierpoint as the pinnacle of success. Gus gets invited to take on more significant work for the minister he's working with. Yasmin reconnects with her former nanny but is turned away when she asks if the nanny had an affair with her father. Back in London, Harper is cold towards Dan, and when he questions her about an affair in Berlin, she dismisses and insults him. Yasmin flirts with Celeste, who turns her down. Meanwhile, Harper convinces Bloom to go short on a brick-and-mortar drugstore chain, but the market moves against them. Sensing trouble, Dan confides in Harper that Adler plans to shut down the London office, but she alone is invited to New York. On her last day, Yasmin tries to reconnect with a distracted Harper, later hooking up with Celeste. Kenny tearfully apologizes to Yasmin. During a smoke break, Eric advises Harper not to trust Dan. Bloom tries to reconnect with his son, Leo, who is dating Gus. Harper convinces Bloom to dump their holdings, going against Pierpoint's interest. Rishi realizes he's been played, and Dan admits he was eavesdropping on Harper's conversation with Bloom. Dan then kicks Harper off the trading desk. Desperate to save her career, Harper goes to Bloom, urging him to push their position during his speaking engagement. Gus' sister tells him to focus on his future, prompting Gus to encourage Leo to make amends with his father. Leo does, but his call causes Bloom to cancel his speech, ruining Harper's play. Feeling defeated, Harper turns to Eric with a new plan. Harper, Eric, and Rishi team up, trying to sell themselves to another bank to escape Pierpoint. Harper pitches herself as Bloom's manager, but Bloom won't return her calls. What Eric thought was a secure deal turns out to be a ploy by the bank to leverage another team. With that opportunity lost, their plans to leave Pierpoint become public. Bloom meets with Gus, who thanks him for helping Leo, despite Leo not getting into Oxford. Bloom is impressed by Leo's determination, and Gus leverages his ministry connections to secure a spot for Leo at Oxford. At a party, Yasmin regrets sleeping with Celeste and reacts angrily when Maxim attempts to assault her. Venetia crashes a tense dinner between Robert and Nicole, seeking client experience. Nicole assaults Venetia. Venetia goes to Yasmin, who brushes it off, then to Kenny and confronts Robert, accusing him of knowing about the assault. Robert confesses to Dan, who informs Adler. Adler advises burying the issue as the London office is closing down. Kenny confronts Yasmin about dismissing Venetia, leading to an argument where Yasmin reminds him of his past harassment of her. Disgusted with Adler and aware of Harper, Eric, and Rishi's plans, Dan decides to join them in leaving Pierpoint. Harper, Eric, Rishi, and Dan get an offer from a New York bank but decide to decline, keeping it quiet. Gus, frustrated, gives Harper insider info, which she passes to Bloom. Bloom uses it to his advantage on TV, boosting his holdings. Gus's minister gets a promotion, but Gus is fired for the leak. It becomes clear Bloom manipulated everyone. Harper and Eric go to Adler with a pitch, a streamlined London office, accusing Rishi and Dan of disloyalty, and threatening to expose Nicole's assaults and Pierpoint's negligence. Adler agrees. On the eve of Rishi's wedding, Harper learns he will be fired but keeps quiet. Yasmin, fed up with Pierpoint's culture, confronts her father about his affairs. He cuts her off financially and changes her apartment locks. Yasmin ends up staying with Robert. At Rishi's wedding, Robert agrees to get coke for Yasmin, but gets arrested. Nicole bails him out, regaining control over him. Gus starts working for Bloom as an assistant. The next week, Dan is fired along with most of the London office. Harper is shocked to find Rishi still at his desk. Eric takes Harper to HR, where it's revealed she never graduated college, leading to her firing.